special edition of Rant Part 2 because there's a very special guest. His name is Adam Blencowe. How do you pronounce it, Adam?
Blencowe, yep, second one.
Blencowe. And he's one of the big wigs in Racing and Sports, which is a giant organisation and a major feature in the Australian racing landscape, and in fact, international racing landscape. And I think for a young bloke, you've been there for a long while, Adam.
Been there for over 10 years, and yeah, I'll take young bloke. Yeah, I've been there since the early 20s. I was telling you before, I was bookmaking before that, and then got sick of doing nights. So I sent Gaz an email and said I'm a fan. I started off as a Racing and Sports fan, and then just sent an email and said, look, I like the Don Scott worksheets. I'm mucking around with them. Any chance of a job when the sun's up? Pretty much.
All right. And when you say Gaz, who's Gaz?
Gary Crisp, the boss.
Okay. Yeah. Because I and again, that's another name I know, but he does a rating thing, doesn't he?
He runs Racing and Sports.
Yeah. Started with Don Scott.
I did too.
Yeah.
All right. So what was your racing sort of insight, apart from actually doing ratings? What sort of racing perspective did you have at that time at the age of 21?
I was probably, at 21, I was more I started off, I'm a lifer. So I started off, Dad was a bookmaker as well, worked with Colin Tidy and Con Cafetaris early doors when they set up corporates and stuff. So I had an idea of having a bet, and I was betting with Dad on the couch every Saturday arvo on, from early 90s sort of thing, primary school years. So I had some idea, but I was 21 carnival punter, really, like I suppose a lot of people, and probably more interested in probably footy and cricket really at that point in time. But, carnival times, always tuning in and having a bet. But looking back, I wouldn't say I was having anything like a sophisticated bet, although I was backing winners. So, maybe the more you know, the less you know in a sense.
There was a bit subconscious.
Done all right.
Well, don't they call it paralysis by over-analysis?
Yeah.
Don't we all suffer from that at certain stages?
At a decade of
it.
Yeah. And there's no cream for it either.
Okay, so you start there, and obviously it's a sort of ratings-focused organisation with lots of data, really. Yep. What's the pathway for you from starting?
It was a lot smaller, and like I said to you before, Racing and Sports had sort of just broken away from AAP and was sort of getting bigger. So I lucked out. I got in at a really good time, and I got to be, I started doing some pretty basic stuff early doors. It was still, we used to get the Sportsman and mark up the margins in the Sportsman when I first started there, that sort of stuff. So it was sort of a bit of data entry and a lot of data management, but I was lucky that I was the one who managed to come in at the right time to fall under Gary's wing. So I was the one that Gary brought along and sort of showed what he was doing, handicapping Australian horses. And then I sort of caught the wave a little bit there. And as we've grown international, we do a lot more races. So obviously Gaz can't, have his hand on all of it. So I sort of took over a lot of that rating stuff. And yeah, I've been to the school of Crisp, if you like.
Okay. So he's a massive mentor in your professional life. And so what sort of paths did that take you on in terms of understanding horse racing?
Yeah, so you probably do. If you're looking at it through, I think ratings help you to, like I said before, you get that paralysis by analysis, but you kind of probably bust through that and come back to a simplicity, if you like, I think. And I can see that in the way I've gone about things, where you sort of get down a lot of technical rabbit holes, over the journey. And as you said, we've got a lot of data. So you got a lot of data and a bit of free time. You can dig around and you can find some stupid shit. But if you sort of, I think the longer I've done it, the more I've come back to keeping it simple, and that's probably been my pathway through a decade of rating horses, if you like.
So what does that look like, keeping it simple?
Keeping it simple, I suppose. So I probably made it. Are we talking betting now, or just rating horses?
Obviously there's two bits. There's the analysing the race, the upcoming race, and then there's playing the race.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably, that's a very good question. I sort of think, I don't know that I really have an answer to that. I don't think It's a very interesting question. Like, what is it? What do you do?
All right. So where do you, at what point do you bring your intuition into your analysis? So I imagine that you've produced an automatic market of some kind based on the data that you've already massaged post-race.
That's where the bulk of the work, I suppose, is in that post-race section, and then the computer comes in, and you're right, comes up with an automated line of sorts. And now for a long time, I went down the path of trying to automate everything and become an automated punter, if you like.
Really?
What's that, sorry?
Sort of a bot, a human bot.
Yeah, I think there is sort of like an underlying thing where I think there's an idea out there that's something to achieve is to become sort of a robot, and that the robots are something to admire and something to work towards. But I soon learned that even if that could be profitable, maybe it wasn't entirely profitable, and that just spinning off and using your intuition a bit more and certain, like, loosening the constraints of automated betting a little bit, and coming up with, you know, having ideas and betting on those ideas without reasons, just betting on your, as you say, intuition a little bit. I probably didn't believe in intuition. I still don't know that I believe in intuition, but I think there's maybe an extra utility in it, in that you enjoy what you're doing a lot more, and there's something to be gained from that. And for whatever reason, even if I don't believe in it, for whatever reason, it does seem to coincide with pretty good results.
Well, insight can be very satisfying, can't it?
And flexibility can be too.
What I love what Adam's saying. The thing is, you need the data, okay? But I'm more of a field punter, but shit, I'd be lost without the data to sort of back it up or provide a starting position for me.
I think there's an element of, like, you sort of fill your mind with all these formal ideas, and then I was probably stopping there for a long time and trying to keep everything very formal, and then realizing that actually that formality is all well and good, and you should still fill your brain with it, but then let your brain run free, and you don't necessarily need a reason to. You sometimes just look at a race or whatever, and you know that you've filled your mind with all the right sort of information, and you look at a race and you think that is the horse and that's over the odds and I'm going to back that. You can get to a point, I think, where you're over constrained by the formalities and the process, where you look at that and you go, yeah, well, it's 9-2, but the computer says 9-2, so I'm not going to have a bet, even though I cannot explain it. I can't put a reason on it, but I know that horse is actually 5-2, and I should be just smashing the shit out of it.
Yeah,
I need to trust myself.
I love that. Love that. But I mean, I've noticed Mark changing a little bit to that recently as well too, Mark. So,
well, I think I've always been like that betting wise, and I think perhaps that's a more targeted area, Adam, where you're talking about you can come up with a market, and there are many ways to produce a market, and some markets will be automatic, and some markets you may have massaged with your intuition. But I mean, ultimately, it's the pulling the trigger that where your intuition becomes most important, or your
I'm not
skill.
massaging it at all. In fact, that's another area where I probably got a little bit lost in, like, you spend so much time. I mean, ideally, again, this is something I think people doing a lot of form can get a lot of satisfaction out of just doing the form, whether there's a point to it or not. So there's that, but I don't want to spend too much time going around in circles doing the form. And I think I'm not actually changing the prices that the computer comes up with. I'm just not betting like rigidly towards them, I suppose, is the answer to. And that's, you asked before about what's the evolution like. I suppose that is I'm probably working back around towards where I was at 21, which is just, see good bet, take good bet, but I'm getting there with a better, more educated and maybe clearer mind.
Yes, but it is actually hard to get to that point if you've done all that study. So it's not not an easy task to actually return to that native state.
I think, Adam, you mentioned it before, is that you've actually, in your head and in your database, you have all the B's and A's information. Mm-hmm. So whatever field decision you're making is going to be affected by the access to really good data.
Exactly. And I think a really important point there as well is I probably thought more about not so much gaining more information, but losing information as well, just getting rid of some stuff and focusing in on what the ideas that I've got that I like and that work, or that seem to work for me as well. So, because I suppose every bit of information you take, and there's this, I think there's this idea out there, like I was saying before, with the people want to be a robot in a sense. And I think there's this idea that if you just worked even harder, if you just tried really hard and got even more information, you could know literally every detail about a horse or about a race, and that you could come to the answer. But it's not actually true, because in the end, you can get all the information, every detail you like about the horse, but all that information comes from the past. And when it comes to having a bet, you're stuck in the future. So you get to the same point, but you just do a lot more work and probably junk yourself out a lot more getting there. So yeah, probably getting rid of information a little bit as well has been probably an idea and a good idea I've had in the last couple of years, I suppose.
So there's that freshness that you're sort of touching on there, but in terms of actual ideas, what is fit for public consumption and what isn't?
Do you mean like specific? So I suppose this is the other thing, and this is probably where I get a little bit confused, is that the ideas, maybe the overriding idea is that I don't really think I need an idea or a reason. I think that's a problem, is trying to articulate. So there's whatever, and I suppose in a media job, reasons are everything. You need to, here's what I like, and these are the reasons for that. And you need to come up with a plausible story for why you want to back said horse. This horse has a history of going well at this point in its preparation, or countless different little variables like that. But I suppose the thing is, instead of trying to measure everything and instead of trying to rationalize everything, more just accepting that the idea, like as I said before, if you can see it, I don't know what's going on in here. I never know what's going on in here, but accepting whatever is going on in there has been well seeded by good information and good ideas, and I've avoided bad information and bad ideas, and then just running with it without reasons.
But I think when we talk about this, you've got to be careful to all the guys out there watching that a shitload of work has gone in onto that.
Yeah,
the side that you're not paying attention to give you the ability to bet off feel a little bit more.
I suppose you're building a framework for thinking right, or what thinking along what you think is right and the ideas that you think are right.
Well, my favourite quote is from a grandmaster in, I think, the 20s or 30s, chess grandmaster. His name was Casablanca or something like that. Anyway, I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but I'm not good at that. Yeah. But anyway, they are, because the whole thing in chess is how many moves ahead can you think? Okay. And his answer was one, the right one. Now, obviously, he came to that because he's been playing chess every day for 20 years. Yeah. That sort of, it's a lot of similarities with that way of thinking. So.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Probably a much better way than the word.
You remind me very much of a young Peter Todd, Adam. Can you see that, Mark?
Was he a dapper chap?
He was actually.
No. He wasn't dapper, but he was he's got a great brain, and I'm sure your boss would probably know him actually. So you should ask him. Would Gary Chris know Peter Todd? I think he would, wouldn't he?
Very well. Yep.
Yeah,
well enough anyway.
You remind me of a young Peter, and you also remind me of some of these young players at the casino that play poker that look completely fucking tortured on how to play ace. And you just look at them and they just lose their fucking mind. And I completely understand all that emotion and feeling it. So do you play poker?
No, I never really got into poker. I just stuck with horses. Horses seem to
understand. My advice to you is don't go there.
Yeah, I think that's, I've read a few books on poker, and it's sort of like, oh shit, maybe I should have a go at this. But no.
It's you're very similar to the young guns that play poker.
You know what the thing is with poker, that AI beats human beings now.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
In poker,
and I think horse racing, you can outperform the bots using exactly what Adam's talking about.
Blokes trying to build bots, and isn't it just a lazy way to bet? Isn't it blokes looking for? I just want to get a printout every morning, put in this information, let the bets just go and take care of themselves. And I don't know if a lazy way ever in racing.
You'll lose some of the extra utility out of racing that we all get, which is the fun of. Doesn't matter if they're it's all well and good to be right and to churn a point out a day or something like that, but you want to also enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah,
and that's where I think come back to
my happiest two results on the weekend were both losing bets. Great news, because I just couldn't believe how well it went and how clever I was, and then watching the horse bite after the race, I thought, you little trier. And then Academy, when I sort of loaded up knowing it would get there, and when it raced away, and I laid $4, $3, and then I laid $2.44, and I got beat, and I just walked around here with my shoulders. Fucking, how haven't I got 100 million? I just loved it. And you're not going to get that out of robot betting ever.
No, very true. Very true. You better enjoy it.
Yeah, I still enjoy it.
All right. So
No, that's actually untrue. I absolutely fucking love it.
Yeah.
Joy is not the word.
As we all do. So where do you focus these days, Adam? Well, like now that you've had your racing racing and betting apprenticeship, what have you settled on in terms of theatres?
So yeah, I'm more Melbourne than anywhere else. Melbourne is sort of, for whatever reason, just, I suppose both mum and dad's family were from Melbourne, sort of thing. So growing up, like the races on Saturday were like, where are they racing Saturday? It was Caulfield, it wasn't Randwick.
Yep.
And it's sort of, for whatever reason, that's just sort of
Adam, can I just jump in? Can you explain to us out there, Jamie Carr, what the hell's going on?
I think that will change, but what is going on there is that she's riding her horse and not worrying about playing jockeys is my read on things. She's getting horses to run evenly and efficiently, and you can see that when you study numbers. And so she's drawing the best out of horses by not trying to hit a spot on the mat, but rather just trying to get her horse to relax, breathe, and run.
Is that the Magic Man sort of idea as well?
I think a little bit. I think, gee, well, I sacked Hong Kong Racing quite a while ago, but when you do watch it a little bit, he's probably best of both worlds. He can play jockeys with the best of them as well and still make it work. But he does have a way as well where he seems to work, instead of working on the horse, he's working with the horse. That's
why did you say she's going to drop off? You sound a bit gourd-like by saying that.
I reckon they get hold of her a little bit, don't they? Everyone gets in their ear and all of a sudden maybe trying to ride a little bit cute, stop doing what works.
So you feel that the graph on her will turn?
I reckon jockeys, when they get in form, maybe this is just nonsense, jockeys go through these patches of form and it always seems to coincide with them bouncing their horses out a couple of pairs closer. And then eventually they start holding them up, acting cute again, and they go back to where they were striking before, and no one's ever jerried that maybe you should just keep bouncing them out.
But the solution is a lot of the time simple, isn't it?
One of my main underwriting ideas is that even pace is the way to get horses to run faster. It's basic physics. So the closer you're riding your horse to even pace, the better they're going, and the higher level of performance you get out of your horse. Eventually, that's, you keep running big ratings, you're going to translate into wins. I think that's what happens. Bo Merton's nearly won a premiership in Victoria. Did he win a premiership? Or nearly knocked off Craig Williams as an apprentice in a Melbourne premiership by basically putting everything in the first couple, just bouncing him out, running him along, letting him roll, and using his claim. Lost the claim and then started trying to ride cute, and now he's riding at 3% in the sticks. I mean, I don't understand why.
He's another jockey you just mentioned there that seems to ride a lot of winners. Craig Williams, he just seems, if he's on a 6-4 chance, it's going to win. I'm just like, that's
not
just
one dieback.
Hey, not the one Jimbo. Well, certainly not the one dieback when he comes to Sydney. I can promise you that. He's just terrible up here.
He's obviously, he's got runs on the board, right? You can't ride that many winners for that long without having an idea about what you're doing.
And Adam, what about obviously you're keen on go forward horses in Melbourne. Off sort of the limited stuff I've done down there, it seems like you can get away with a lot more on pace down in Melbourne than you can in Sydney.
There has been for a long time now, probably since Moody lost his ticket. Back then, he's back now, obviously, and hopefully he gets a big army of horses around him. But there is a lot of trainers who are default cover trainers. I reckon.
Yeah.
And when you said that about Peter Moody, is that because you like to back his runners, or he's a mate of yours?
Well, I think he fits my idea of what's a good idea. He wants his horses, he gets them fit, he puts them up on speed, gives them their chance. If they're good enough, they win. And I think that's, I'm all for that. So
that's very Gay Waterhouse up here, isn't it? Right?
He absolutely is. Yeah, he is probably Melbourne's version of. Okay. I mean, I love Gay as well. Gay is terrific.
But
was.
Well, give her the ammo, and I reckon she still probably is.
Well, that's right. She won the fillies race, and then she just got touched off in a race that Embrace is not a good enough horse, but he nearly won the race.
So she's still, maybe she's not getting the results, but is she still maximising what she's got? Probably.
But aren't you actually looking at an area that is underplayed? It's underplayed by the participants in this case, by the trainers and the jockeys. So the trainers, and I remember Robbie telling me this famous vignette about David Hayes with Churchill Downs, and he he must have said to David one day, Churchill Downs, it's why does it always go back? And David goes, well, if you lead and you lose, it's tragedy. And if you go back and run third, everyone's happy.
I work with Simon Dinopoulos, who I work with, is just always banging on about that. Trainers will go back and run on because it's easier to explain in the losers bar.
Yeah.
It looks better.
All right, but that creates an opportunity, as you've said. There's this school of thought that is all pervasive, that pervades the trainers and the jockeys love looking good coming from the back as well. I mean, when you watch Huey, like just meander home from the back and win, it's like the mark of a superior jockey. But I mean, it doesn't necessarily maximize your winning chances.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, one of the problems with probably trying to use it is you need to find out who's actually going to do the right thing by you. And, the horses who have been ridden inefficiently, one day you go to back them again and they get ridden inefficiently again. As you say, with David Ace and Churchill Downs, you're waiting for the day. Oh, this horse, he's got a bigger engine than we're seeing here. I'm going to back him, and when he's ridden efficiently, it's all going to work. But they keep snagging.
By the way, what about when a guy's down the pub watching a race and the horse goes out and leads and falls over and wins by a long neck, and then every once in a while there's a horse out the back?
You wouldn't want it again.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, and the thing that rattles down the outside, oh, what a good horse, I'm backing that next start. I mean, you've got to go to the pub all the time and hear exactly what they're all saying around the tab there and do the exact opposite.
God, all your theories are doing the opposite. It's like, you remind me of Jeff Pendlebury at the casino. I told you what he used to do. He used to play craps, but he'd buy in for 5,000. He'd walk around from table to table. The minute he saw a Chinaman chasing, he'd go bet on that table and bet against him. That's all. He used to win all the time at it.
Smart idea. Not
a bad idea. I got to say to you, Adam, that I bet 7 days a week and maybe 5 nights a week on the trots and this and that, because even if I'm sitting still, I'm so bored, I've got to be betting in play. Even if I've done no work in the race, I just have some theories on in play and like small liability, maybe a monkey, a race, and just trusting SP as their jump. And I can assure you, I lay a lot of horses well under SP, and I'm winning a shitload on the one to the second half of the field under SP, and doing my fucking balls on the ones that go to the lead. That they're $5, they jump, they go to the lead, and they go, okay, we'll take 280 off you. And I go, well, fucking, I can't help myself, fuck you. And I lose at the front, the front two compared to the back, and the back half I win it.
Yeah, I must
say
exactly
what you're saying.
The even pace idea as well. It's not so much about. I suppose I'm not so much talking about the map. I'm not talking about necessarily going forward. It just happens to be that that's typically where the ideal spot to be is. But it's about letting your horse run and not conceding lengths for concede 4 lengths to get cover, which saves you 1.
Gord will often talk about what happens to a horse while you're trying to achieve that position as well.
Have you ever seen a horse fighting a jockey pulling for its head win?
You lose more. It's you tag 4, but you actually lose energy in the horse.
One of the big ones in Melbourne now. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I never remember this being a thing years ago. Is the wind? Everyone's talking about the wind all the time. Where's the wind? The wind's in their face, and then you just see. I sit there betting away, and I'm just like, God, I hope this doesn't get through to the jockey's room, because they can't process it. They're going to make an absolute mess of this.
Yeah.
You just know, like, the idea that you'd give up 6, 8, 10 lengths.
Hey, Gadam, it would definitely get through to the jockey's room, I promise you. Definitely. All the trainers talk about it up here.
Disaster, right?
Yep.
Just point and shoot, guys.
It's point 2?
Point and shoot.
Point and shoot.
All right, so
as Glenn likes, you just glorified taxi driver.
A few questions from out wide. Do you do replays, Adam?
Nope, not really. I mean, I watch the races when I bet on them, but that's one of the bits of information. I mean, again, it's one of those things. People are going to get pleasure and enjoyment out of doing the replays, but I'd rather avoid the work. And I think replays, people can get good information out of them. People are obviously good at using them, but I suppose all that information, all that signal comes with noise. And if you're going to take, I'd choose not to take that. I feel like video replays probably have a pretty high, like, noise to signal ratio, if you like. There's going to be a lot of noise in there. So I'd prefer just to just to avoid that information and let that one go. It comes back to the idea before about trying to learn every detail about things. I'm happy to let replay slide and just stick with the ratings and the ideas that I have elsewhere.
Wet tracks.
That really surprises me.
Yeah, I'm probably
I'm not saying you're wrong or right. I'm just saying it surprises me
either am I,
because,
by the way, but
yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I sort of.
It's good to see a young man completely tortured by the game. It's doing something for me.
All right. What do you do when it's wet?
Don't say don't bet. Don't say don't bet. Well, chuck you straight off the show.
I don't. I must admit, I don't care. I don't do anything. It's a bit like track bias. It's again, it's just information that I prefer not to. You got to make assumptions there that I'd rather not make. I suppose with chasing wet trackers or chasing track bias. Certainly, like sometimes, look, some horses, without actually studying it, I can look at a form guide and I'm like, okay, well, Jungle Edge likes it wet. I'm not disputing that. Or some days there's a slight bias, whatever. I'm not disputing that. But you have to make assumptions to actually bet with that information, and I'd rather just ignore it. Again, like I was saying before, you'd rather just focus on the ideas that you.
Is it Adam? You're focusing on the variables where you think you've got an edge in the market, and you have an edge in the market, and there's some variables where you haven't sort of put into your system efficiently, maybe, or.
Yeah, I just don't even really. Dog goes crazy. Yeah, I just don't really like to think about it. I'd rather not worry. I mean, there are obviously horses that prefer wet tracks. There are horses that don't go on wet tracks, and I get that. I suppose the market will sort of buff them out a little bit. So I'd rather just stick with what I'm doing and bet and let the market either pay me or not. I will say that I suppose there is probably a snapping point. I guess Glenn won't like this, but there probably is a point. I suppose there would be a point if you're like, this is just an absolute mess, like it's storming, howling, whatever, and you're just like, this is going to be way outside where I had this meeting being, and I suppose maybe then I'll can it. But again, I'm doing nothing formal about wet tracks. I remember I read this thing about George Soros, the great old investor, talking about he'd move millions of dollars out of certain positions if he got a backache. I suppose seems bloody insane, but I suppose there's a little bit of that. I suppose if you're watching a meeting and you're like, you can just, for whatever reason, you get a backache and you're just like, I'm out.
Yeah, you're listening to the universe.
Yeah, I suppose.
No, but the thing is, Adam is he thinks it's a feel backache thing, but it's based on the fact that he's got all this knowledge behind that is subconsciously making him make that decision. I'm assuming. So
I hope so.
I hope because what are you going to do? Like Canterbury, for example, fence on fire Canterbury. Are you going to ignore maps in that circumstance, or are you just not going to bet?
I am not. I suppose the word again is formally. I'm not going to formally worry about it, but I suppose when I go to have that bet or not have that, when I go to pull the trigger, there's that.
It's a very famous.
You know when you're having a shit bet.
Yeah.
There's a very famous kind of early '80s stories which Mark might remember. I can't remember his name. He was the bloke that drove over the cliff at. What's his name? Got in his car and just ran straight over the cliff.
Yep.
Real racing punter, but he went there one day and he got beaten in the first by a photo, and then he bet up on the second and got beaten in a protest or something, and then just walked in the ring with about 8,000 in cash and just threw it all up in the fucking air and said, well, I'm only going to burn it anyway, and walked out. It's only all going to go anyway, so you cunts have a fucking go with this, and fucking walked out. Poor bastard, rest his soul. He was tortured right to the end. They say he smiled just before impact. It's the life of a punter. It's brutal.
Let's talk about the life of a ratings analyst. And you had something to do with the benchmark system. Is that right, Adam? You had in terms of
I was probably more. So Gary did help them implement that at the first stages there, and I was lucky enough. Again, talk about lucky timing with me and Racing and Sports, and and getting to learn with Gary, I was able just to sort of tag along a little bit there when that was all put together, and yeah, I got to sit in on that and see how that all got put together at the start and how that all sort of panned out. We don't have anything to do with it anymore, but yeah. Just
so what's an insider's view on the handicapping system
in New South Wales?
Well, anywhere really.
Or everywhere's pretty much adopted a similar idea, haven't they? I think it's probably I could sit here and dispute how they actually, the actual rating of the horses and how they could or should do it, but I think the way I would do it probably wouldn't. I'd prefer it to be much more fluid than it is, and to be much more stretched out. I'd prefer horses to go up and down quickly, and rate races more aggressively, handicap more aggressively to ratings, if you like. So horse goes really well, put it up, but then once it's out of form, put it down. I think that there's a reluctance there because I think people get a bit nervous about trainers, connections, whatever, trying to sort of jerry their handicap and, get themselves down quickly, and we can't let them get down quickly because they'll win. But I sort of think that I'd allow that to have, would that really happen? Is that really beneficial? Are trainers and connections clever enough to really take advantage of that? I'm not so sure. And I don't see a huge downside in it anyway. So I'd like to see horses moving a lot quicker. So those horses who are bashing their head up against the wall.
Adam, on that commentary just there, on that commentary, you don't watch the replays, you said that, and then you just said, are the trainers clever enough to have their horse, like, for example, put in a couple of quiet runs to get his weight down? Yeah. You look like a sort of young bloke to me that doesn't believe that there are dead ends in race. Is that fair commentary?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that at all. They're obviously horses. I'm not saying they couldn't get them beat. They could absolutely get them beat.
Don't get me wrong. Gord's a great believer that hardly anything's ever dead. Aren't you, Gord? That's a fair comment for you.
Yeah, as far
in
as
general, you think it's
general opinion is.
You think it's a 99% pretty.
I think most people.
I think it's pretty clean.
Yeah, I think
Gord's always thought it's really clean.
I would be on Gord's side with that. And I suppose what I was saying there is I'm not sure that trainers are clever enough to even, let's say they were, run them dead a couple. And I'm saying let's drop them quickly. So maybe they drop 6-8 points. They go from Randwick on a Saturday back to Newcastle Thursday. I'm not sure they're clever enough to run them dead a couple and then just go bang and win.
Yeah.
You think they're that good?
I totally agree with that.
I tend to think maybe they are, but Gord doesn't. Yeah.
Well, either way, it sounds like it'd be interesting for betting.
Either way, it would be interesting.
Yes. So
are you married, Adam?
Yep.
Oh, your poor wife.
I know.
Fucking tortured soul. It only gets worse.
But what about the ratings idea that we've got these pattern races and we've got to uphold the ratings in these races? And so if you get a shit field, no one acknowledges it's a shit field. We'll just massage all their ratings so that it looks like the sort of race that it's supposed to look like.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's easy to do, isn't it? Because there's no public ratings, don't have any. They don't have to bet with them, so they don't have any responsibility for getting them right. But the pattern thing is interesting because I think it's one of those things. Punters, I mean, who really cares? I don't care.
No.
Punters don't care that the Winx is a Group 1, a Group 2. No one cares. We all know it's not a Group 1. But I think the bit where we care or might care is when because connections care, it influences the way horses are campaigned and it influences the races that they run in. And I think that upsets punters. And again, like I was talking about before, the extra utility that punters get in doing the form or taking a position and enjoying trading on their opinion. I think there is a huge utility in punters getting good sport as well to bet on. And that means the best horses racing the best horses in the best races. And I think, we can be cynical old punters all we like. That still matters to us. I still want to see, good races between good horses. I don't want to see the good horses all ducking each other and running off and winning races at 4-5 and, telling everyone that they're world champions when they're not. So, I think it's something worth putting a bit of time and energy into getting right.
All right. So do you have an idea as to how that might look?
In terms of how they are going to manage to
manage. Well, at the moment, I presume we've got the system that you've just described, which is there's so many options for the elite horses that they tend not to run against each other.
That they can avoid each other. Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, it's. I don't think I'd have to be particularly clever to come up with a solution to that. But whether I can see that
happening
or being adopted, I mean, I think we all know. Just have less races and make the pathways clearer and make it obvious which races are the grand finals and which aren't, and the connections will move their horses accordingly. But good luck.
Yeah,
right, well,
I mean, it's all about stallions retiring too early, and there being too many mares races because they all want to get group quality. It's all because of the breeders.
It's funny that they don't like the idea that the breeders want more races for mares to have more black type, but then it's a marketplace, and there must be, if there's more supply of black type, then it must lose value. So in the end, it's sort of cutting off their own.
But it's a very saleable factor to less knowledgeable people. So there's a lot of people that don't know about the racing game that are buying into horses, and that the owners and breeders can say, look, this was Group 3 place, so they're willing to pay more, ignoring the fact that there's now hundreds more horses that are Group 3 place.
I know. I mean, I know that a lot of the big clever players in that market are they're well aware of it, and they're using ratings and measuring performance rather than just worrying about that sort of stuff. So I mean, it's like the great debate about whether the Everest needs to be a Group 1 or whether is the Manikato worth more on the stallion page than the Everest, as if the big breeders are really so stupid that they can't see through that an Everest winner is like, I mean, they're not that stupid.
All right, but there were, I think you pointed out, or I'm told you pointed out, that there were fewer 2-year-old races running, or fewer 2-year-olds running in the season just gone by than the previous season. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's been a that probably runs a little bit counter to what most people think, but that's been an ongoing trend for a long time now, is that we're having far fewer 2-year-old runners year on year. And you probably back in the old days, like 2-year-old races with massive fields. They come from everywhere to run in those 2-year-old races and all those slipper trials and things. And we're seeing that, those fields are much smaller now. So yeah, that's an ongoing trend for sure. And it's not a trend I like at all, because I think my read of the evidence is that running at 2, there's this idea that running at 2 is harmful, but it just doesn't. The evidence just doesn't support that. Running at 2 and running in the good races at 2 is a great thing. Those horses are, far outperform those who didn't.
So I'm sort of missed the. What do you think the nexus is? Like, we're breeding a consistent number of horses each year, and
no, that's dropping as well.
So what's going on? Is there a segment of the breeding industry that's disappearing? The sort of cheaper end.
Going to the next step, the why, I'm not entirely sure of. I've not bothered to step beyond this is what's happening, because my personal interest is only in the racing side of it. I suppose I'm just interested in more horses racing, because that competition forges the next good horses, and I want good horses to bet on. But why are there fewer horses making it to the track at 2? I'm not sure. Mick Kent spoke about this and made some pretty good points that he's probably worth listening to on that, about the toughness of the breed, if you like, whether we're breeding a weaker horse now than we used to, and maybe that's why they can't make it to the track, or maybe it's just a bit of training methodology. You always hear about, like, people hail the patience of trainers, but I often wonder whether the greatest skill that a trainer could have is just sending their horse to the races. I mean, horses, like everything else, I don't know why we think that horses would improve by standing in a paddock in the rain, when everything else we do in life, if you want to get good at it, you practice.
Very good point.
By the way, there's one extra little piece of information that you might actually have there, and that is the number of starts on average per 2-year-old.
Not off the top of my head, but I reckon I looked at that 12, 18 months ago, and I wouldn't have my life on it, but I think that's down a couple of runs as well. I think that was down a couple of runs in the short term, and way down on sort of
20 years ago. Yeah.
Mark, he's very similar to a young Roy Milton too.
Yes, indeed.
Another handsome fella.
No,
What
he actually went back to study and became a top level psychiatrist, and now he just he sends in some of our best emails, and he's one of my better mates. And you're very similar to him at the same age, which is
Very thoughtful.
you've got it all going for you, Adam. You could be fucked.
So they're the 2-year-olds. So how do you look at the current crops, the 3-year-olds versus the 4-year-olds versus the 5-year-olds?
Do you have right now?
Yeah, how it stands right now.
Yeah, I think the last year's 3, now 4-year-olds were terrible across just about every.
So this is Mwanga, for example. That's
although and then so all of a sudden, I mean, there's a little bit of information that you've got to take on board. I'm sitting there telling everyone these 4-year-olds are absolute dog shit, and then he turns up and wins the Winx, and okay, well, maybe I need to readjust my view, but I don't think so. I think he was in the best couple of 3-year-olds last season. I think he was time form ratings wise.
He might have also got his birthday present on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't I had a flick over that this morning. It wasn't it was a good win, blah blah blah, but bunched finish, messy finish, and the time was good rather than better than that. So I wouldn't think it was I don't think he probably did much more than he did in the Randwick Guineas, if at all anyway. So that was, still, I mean, it's a 4-year-old winning in Group 1, which they won 1.5 against older horses last year, which is the worst return basically ever. So they're a pretty
it's a crap crop. And
and that's why I'm a bit bullish about this year's 3-year-olds and backing 3-year-olds, because the other thing about that is it bleeds through. So you look at that at the top end sort of thing, and that's where all your stories come from the top end. But then when you get those 3-year-olds racing at the back end of the season in Victoria, those 3-year-olds, particularly over middle distances, when they stepped up and ran against older horses and were bet up as if they were the sort of promising progressive horse and came up short. There was one Sydney on Saturday, Red Santa was like that. Just the old boys will knock him off because he's been racing ordinary sort of horses. So you'll see a little bit of that, and that's why I think there's a massive hole for this year's 3-year-olds to sort of. You've got those older horses who are probably starting to tilt onto the wrong side of the aging curve, and nothing directly in behind them to fill those spots. So there's going to be some spots there for 3-year-olds to step in and win some good races. And for whatever reason, can I ask you guys a question? Why?
Sure.
Why are last year's 2-year-old colts all pretty good and the fillies so terrible? Like the line seems to be drawn so obviously. Like sometimes, you get the colts are a bit better than the fillies on occasion, blah, blah, blah. This time it just seems black and white, and I cannot come up with a theory for that.
So the corollary there is, and a good man, Peter Todd, once put it to me, that a good crop will be nominated by the males outperforming the females, and if the females do very well in the Blue Diamond and the Golden Slipper and what have you, then that's an indicator of a shit crop.
Which is another piece of evidence that means backing these 3-year-olds later on in the preparation is going to be very juicy.
Mark, we better move on to these questions. You got to get vaccinated, remember?
Yeah, it's all right. We'll just keep rolling along. A question without notice: do Racing and Sports pay Racing New South Wales for sectional data?
Nope.
And do they have access to all the sectional data?
To New South Wales, they put out whatever they put out on is it Punters Intel app?
Yep.
Yeah. So there's that, but I don't know. They don't cover every track, do they?
No, they don't.
No.
They don't.
So.
Your another question without notice: your top 3 beers at the moment.
Top 3 beers?
Yes.
Well, I'm more a wine man. I'll say Proud Canberran. I'll say most Ben Spoke beers are terrific, but the Red Nut's a cracker. And I'll stay on that. But I'd be much better off giving a wine recommendation. If you can get your hands on some Cabernet by Helm, he's a Canberra winemaker. Mint.
Okay. Very patriotic or statey there. So
it's funny to see someone from Canberra be patriotic to Canberra. I thought if you lived in Canberra, you hated it. I just thought that because you didn't have a beach.
People hate it, so you stay out.
Yeah, I've actually heard everybody who lives down there loves it. So a few Sydney folk that I know that have moved down there kicking and screaming, but you had to go there because they're in big government jobs, so you got to move to Canberra.
They loved it?
And they ended up loving it, yeah.
Why, is it peaceful or something? goes on? Peaceful.
It's quiet. Stay out of my
Okay.
way.
Hard to go over a boogie board on the weekend, though.
Yeah, I can't be that
Like
far
Burley
from
Griffin.
Gravesend.
Up on Lake Burley
Yeah.
Griffin?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You just
Big
got to
waves
time
there.
it for when the fountain goes off or something like that.
Yeah, get around it.
All right, on to something slightly, well, it's related, but it's not targeted at Adam. Let's have a look at this tweet that I meant to show last
By
week.
the way, sorry, Adam. At what percentage share ownership do you have of Helm?
What's that, sorry?
What percentage share ownership do you have of Helm?
I hope you cut this up and tweet it to them. So he
Yeah,
sees
yeah.
it flagging.
Yeah.
You can screen record and do it yourself. Anyway, let's just have a look at this tweet that's right up GP's alley, I think.
I have an alley. Oh, yeah.
You do have an alley. Hang on, I'll just make sure I'm doing it right. Here it comes. It's from the second day of the festival. And I haven't asked Adam any of the international questions, and I believe he's an international expert, but this is not strictly about the horses.
I'm not a good person, but it just goes to show that good things do happen to bad people. So anyone out there who's up against the wall, fucking stick to it. Every cent you got, your rent, your electricity bill, if you're going to buy your missus a ring, don't fucking do it. Keep punting. Keep fucking punting. I'm not a good person.
Wow, that was great. That was up my alley.
Yeah, I think he
Will
might
that
have
make
had a
you
few
next
cans.
Everest, Dad?
Yeah. I like how he started off. I'm not a good person. That's funny. Yeah, the boys. Hard to beat the boys.
Hi, Mark Lonagordo.
I see that and I'm thinking, thank God I don't go to the track.
That's in England.
what I'm thinking.
That's the footage.
Yeah, I know, but there's You've been to Rose Hill? Bloody hell. Jesus.
That's where you found Milesy. Come on, there's some good's come out of it. Trust All as well, another great ranch show. He's talking about last week, talking about racing names. Remember when Broadmeadow had a ledger reserve for the punters? This was free entry and certainly an eye-opener. Desperates everywhere doing their best, including myself. Rows of bookies taking nickels and dimes. One of these bookies was Larry Shorthouse, small-time bookie, trying to get wages. One punter had escaped from the paddock bookies ring into the ledger reserve. He went up to Larry, can I have $100 on Dashing Minstrel? Larry nearly collapsed. However, quick as a flash, he replied, my name is Shorthouse, not Waterhouse. Cheers, Alan.
Good on you, Alan. Great story. I don't remember the Broadmeadow ledger. Must have been in the 70s.
Oh, it's before our time, Glenn.
Mm.
G'day, fellas, says Stu. I'll see your Angela Jones and raise you an Erica Byrne Burke. Erica's an Irish-born apprentice for Adam Trinder of Mystic Journey fame down in Tassie. She started riding in May and has had 64 rides for 21 winners, 33% strike rate, also 50% on pot. She's ridden at only 2 tracks on the synthetic at Devonport. She's 14 from 42 on the Hobart on the turf. She's 7 from 22. Not bad, eh?
Not bad at all. Very small sample there, Stu, but I've been watching her because, again, I've been in play on the thing and I saw the name Erica Byrne Burke. So being an in-play layer, I thought, well, here's one that won't be able to ride, and I've paid the penalty.
Yeah. So, Adam, do you form opinions on jockeys quickly, slowly? How do you do it?
Yeah, well, I think you probably want to form them fairly quickly, but I probably don't form a lot of them, and certainly around where I'm betting at the moment, I couldn't tell you there's any off the top of my head. I couldn't tell you, hey, let's chase this apprentice. I don't think so. I think it's been pretty quiet in Victoria in terms of worthwhile apprentices for a while. Maybe if there's a young jockey worth jumping on the wagon now, is it's been around for a while. There's a guy called Ethan Brown down in Victoria, who I reckon he's been sort of in and out of the saddle. I'm not sure what his life story is or whether he's had setbacks or whatnot, but I reckon he's one that might make it. So he might be one to follow.
What about when you're betting overseas? Do you have sort of jockeys that you'll go to?
Yeah, Fitz the same thing. I've broken record. It's not formally. I do actually come up with a little jockey ratings sort of system, if you like, which I sort of use. Well, I don't use it so much as I run it up and I keep an eye on it and things like that. So again, I'm sort of priming myself a little bit to know who's who's not only riding well, but who you could expect to ride well, but at the same time, I'm not using it formally. So, yeah, and it's probably not about, one of the reasons I think my little jockey rating system is good is because it seems to highlight the guys who ride all the winners. So there might be something in that.
Always a good system.
But yeah, it's a tough one because you want to sort of be ahead of the curve there, because once the data's spitting it out, obviously the prices of the horses adjust as well. So
yeah, well,
what about the
measured, right? So
what about the two hot young riders we've got in New South Wales squad? Is their curve going to head down in young Reece Jones and young Dylan Gibbons? They seem to ride a lot of winners up here.
Sort of has a little bit lately.
Has it?
They're very firm. So like horses, I was taking $5 about, a couple of months ago, jumping high threes or fours now. So yeah, you got to factor that in.
Yeah, they both go better than expected. You got to say that, especially young Dylan seems to ride very well.
No, they're good riders. They're both really good, and they could take the jump to being proper metropolitan riders. But a long way to go. There's a lot of promising kids that never make first grade.
Yep.
TQ writes, things I miss. Yeah, everything in Gordo's shed. Old bookie boards, cardboard tickets, crayons. He's probably got some old bookies in there as well. I don't know. Well, hopefully not. But
she's a nostalgic person, our TQ.
Surely is. And David just sent me in a photo, which I'll show you, that he picked up. So it'll be on this one, I think. So he bought a board recently. I don't know how he came.
Oh, what a beauty.
So this is Fred Scantlebury. Can you see that, Glenn?
Yeah, can I? What?
This board apparently comes from Adelaide. And so it's got some of the Adelaide fractional prices, 45 to 10, 55 to 10.
Oh, yes,
it's also got 9 to 2, which is the same as 45 to 10. So I'm not sure what's going on there with the ribbons, but
that's in good nick, isn't it?
Yeah,
right.
That's ripper.
So that's the Melbourne Cup of that Vow and Declare one, is it?
Yeah.
I suppose that's the Melbourne Cup. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's bought that for his pool room.
Oh, wow. Great thing to put up in your pool room.
Can you see if I swivel it around? Hang on. Can you see on the corner up there the bag?
Yeah. Who's that name?
That's my great-grandfather's old bag.
Oh, wow.
It's full of crayons and all that sort of stuff. It's even got a stat deck in there from someone saying he promises to pay up.
Wow. How great.
Oh,
that's
how
super,
great.
And where did he field, Adam?
Victoria. A lot of country, but yeah, he went into town a bit as well. Yeah. Around the Murray.
All right.
I'll tell you a quick great story about the great man of racing in Sydney, a champion person and the father figure to a lot of us younger punters. His name was John Story. He was the biggest bookie at the Dogs for a long time. And just prior to his death, which is a few years ago now, just prior to his death, I was just, I don't know, it's farting around somewhere at the back of Erskineville or something, those factory outlet type, but not the just old memorabilia. And I come around a corner and on this big seat, there's this big white bag. It said John Story. And I'd bet in telephone numbers for about 10 years with John. And I just knew the bag. I thought, like my money had gone in that bag and been taken out of that bag in telephone numbers. And I saw his granddaughter at the races. She works out there. And I said, I saw your grandfather. She said, oh, really? And I said, oh, yeah, blah. And I said, they want $500 for it. Anyway, to cut a long story short, a couple of months later, John passed away and just old age or whatever, he became unwell. And this young lady grabbed me at the track and said, oh, I said, sorry. She said, where was that shop? Went straight to that shop. The bag was still there. She paid the $500 and it was front and center of his funeral.
That's great.
Right in the middle, right next to his coffin. So it's a nice bit of information to pick up. So you can find bookies bags everywhere.
Yeah, well, of course you can. Because there's none of them left.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there's probably every thrift shop in Newtown, King Street's got one.
Yeah.
I mainly look around in now in case I see one with Glenn Pollitt in it because I'm going to pick it up and take it out. Because I don't know what's happened to mine and it must have been stolen.
I kept mine. So I'll boil it out one day. Hi, Glenn, Gordo and Mark. I can remember a Cox Plate day in the early 90s where the great Jay Cassidy rode Just a Dancer in the Moonee Valley Cup. It was really hard in the betting, but must have been going around to keep fit for the Melbourne Cup. In his most skilled manner, Jimmy managed to bury it a few pairs back on the rail, get shuffled back at the school, and eventually find some room to work home in the straight and run a nice sixth. I was a young fella, but plenty of the wise old punters that I knew from the track had also tumbled into it. When we assembled in the betting ring after the race, still scratching our heads as to what had happened, a wise and seasoned punter, adopted a religious type demeanour and asked us all to gather around and observe 1 minute silence for just a dancer. Pretty funny and very clever when I think back about it now.
They're great on-course memories. They'll never come back. All those sort of funny times we've all had.
Yeah. So, Adam, how do you get around racing people that you're keen to engage with?
I suppose.
Where's your peeps? Where are your community?
I suppose I work with them. That's sort of the guts of it, I suppose. So the only people I sort of really bounce ideas or talk about the races with really are people at work or the old man. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, so look, it's sort of slim pickings. I mean, Glenn and I grew up on the race course, and you know, valued and treasured the engagement that we had with all sorts of different types. And it's, you know, you pretty much can only reach out on Twitter these days if you're a young bloke trying to find your community.
Yeah, I think Twitter works as well. It might not work quite as well, but it operates as the betting ring, if you like, for now. That's where you've got, you know, everyone's in there on a Saturday. I like going in there on a Saturday for, you know, between races, everyone's talking shit and carrying on and what have you. It probably is a sort of digital betting ring of sorts.
I think Gord's also got a really good handle on how to find people. You're a great caller, and he's just like, you've developed a network of people that you can easily tap into during race day, haven't you, Gord?
Yeah, and they're like, it's amazing, like finding guys to where you just know there's one particular thing they're really good at or better than you at, you know, and ringing those guys and having a chat. I don't have a problem. I don't like text messaging. I don't like social media or shit like that. I like talking to people. So I just ring them. And to be honest, this show has actually enabled me to get in contact with those people.
There you go. Another. You'll have to pay a double sub next time, Gord. Finally, final question. I'll have to wrap this up because I've got to get out of here. But there's a question about international horses here. Current overseas stocks: Europe, Japan. Current best horse in the world. Thoughts on Golden 60 versus the world, Adam?
The best horse in the world is probably, I mean, best. What does best mean, right? That's always the. You know, what does best mean? I think best horse in the world right now is Palace Pier because he keeps winning and beating horses from all around the world while doing it. So I think there will be other horses that ratings nerds, of which I'm one, but would tell you have maybe got bigger spikes than him. But eventually the horses that keep winning, I mean, when you rate horses, there's an assumption that you're making about the value of that win, whereas you're not assuming anything in the actual result, like first beat second, that's a win. So how good that win was is up to some interpretation. We can do a bloody good job of interpreting it, but it is up to some interpretation. But the horse that keeps winning is putting up, you know, information you can't really dispute. And that's why I probably don't think Golden 60, I'm always negative about the Hong Kong horses because I think they're, you know, big fish, small pond, and don't they love to tell everyone how good they are? So I'm always like, you know, knock them off. But he does, I mean, he keeps winning. And when he won the Hong Kong Mile, he beat Order of Australia was there and a couple of others. So, yeah, he's beaten horses from around the world as well. So he's, until something fronts up and beats him, I've got to tip the hat and say he's probably in the top handful. But, yeah, my answer would be Palace Beer is the best in the world. And
back home, Nature Strip, where's he going to sit this spring?
Is there any reason to expect any different? Probably not. He's obviously getting older. He's probably, I'm trying to think, what was the last time we saw Nature Strip? Oh, TJ Smith. No, he's probably not obviously getting slower just yet. And he's always got his hit and miss element about him, but he's a terrific horse. I think he gets a little bit, I think people, this is a thing in the Lightning, is that because he's hit and miss, because he can sort of drop out the back of the telly, people worry about backing him to win, but you don't lose any more for running really badly than if you get edged out into second. So he wins or he runs out the back of the telly. Who cares?
Jesus, you're a man of my heart.
Yeah. You're a young Gord, I'm telling you. You're such a young Gord, it's unbelievable.
All right, he's also got the advantage of no shit 4-year-olds around, so that keeps the older horses going.
There's nothing obviously there to take his crown. I mean, Rothfire, I guess, is the one, but you'd love to see.
Maybe Lost and Running?
Lost and Running?
Yeah, I'm not sold there at all. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he falls into the golden 60 category where, like, okay, he keeps winning, so I'm not going to tell anyone not to like him. And I don't know that he won't be that good, but
On Enchanted Heart beat him.
Yeah, I mean, and he even when he won, like, I don't see anything on the clock that tells me that I should think more of him just yet. So I hope that he proves me wrong, but I don't see it yet.
All right. Well, it's been brilliant. Thanks for hanging around for so long.
Good on you, Adam. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
And
thanks, Adam. That was awesome. And by the way, everybody, I think that thing about the 3-year-olds later on in the season, I've learnt something of somebody that I only met during the show. So now I'm up to $99 a week now. Fuck, you've got me money, Adam.
Don't come to me with a bill if it doesn't play out.
Yeah.
It's all right.
On you, mate.
Talk is cheap. So Gord will be back.
Keep fresh in the game.
Gord will be back with a preview of Kenzo raining tomorrow in Sydney. So we'll be previewing Kenzo. Glenn and I'll be back on Wednesday, and we're back down to Canberra on Saturday, I think. But anyway, thanks very much, Adam, and we'll look out for you around the traps, and perhaps have you on again as well.
Yep, pleasure, guys.
Great show.
Thanks.
See you guys.